What
You
would
have
you
to be more
do
careful,
if you
sir.
saw a little
This is
boy
completely
sitting alone at a
unacceptable.
bus
I
stop at
understand.
sunset,
I really messed
clutching a
up.
teddy
I
bear,
promise it won't
waiting for
happen
a
again.
father who would never return? And what if the man who found him wasn't just a stranger, but someone whose life was about to change forever? Before we go on, allow me to wish you peace and good health. Tell me from which country and at what time are you watching this story? The evening bus rolled gently into Ashland Bus Depot, its headlights casting long streaks across the concrete as the sun slipped behind the hills. Alden Pierce eased the wheel as if guiding a tired horse to the barn, then let the engine rest with a slow exhale of air brakes. The station was winding down, and so was he. Another quiet shift, another night in a town that moved softly, like an old melody people had known for years. Passengers stepped off, offering the small courtesies he'd grown used to. "Thanks, sir. You have a good night now." The kind of phrases that warmed an aging man's heart more than folks realized. He nodded back, gentle but distant, as he always was these days. When the last rider disappeared toward the parking lot, Alden stood to stretch his back. The depot lights flickered overhead, that familiar hum filling the silence. It reminded him of nights long ago when he and his boy, Theo, used to sit on the porch listening to the crickets until the world felt small and safe. Those memories came like soft footsteps, never loud, never gone. He closed the bus door and stepped onto the pavement, feeling the chill of autumn settle through his coat. He scanned the depot out of habit, expecting nothing more than the usual stray commuter waiting for a late pickup. Instead, his eyes paused. At the far end of the bench row, almost swallowed by the lengthening shadows, sat a tiny figure. A little boy, no more than 3, his legs dangling straight down, one foot tucked oddly as if the leg didn't bend the way it should. He held a teddy bear close to his chest, rocking it slightly, as though talking to it in silent whispers only the two of them understood. Alden blinked, uncertain at first if the child was simply waiting for a parent to return from the restroom or the ticket counter. Yet something felt wrong. The boy wasn't fidgeting, wasn't crying, just sitting still with a patience too heavy for a child so small. A light breeze pushed through the depot, making the boy's thin jacket flutter, and Alden felt a pinch in his chest at the sight. He approached slowly, mindful not to startle him. "Evening, little guy," he said softly, the way one would greet a skittish pet. The boy looked up, his eyes round and calm, like he had been expecting someone but not sure who. "Where's your grown-up?" Alden asked. "Daddy went to get tickets," the child answered, his voice as gentle as the wind that stirred the fallen leaves. He said it with certainty, the kind of unshaken faith only children carried. Alden's eyes drifted around the depot. No adult searching, no luggage waiting nearby, no hurried footsteps returning. Just the empty walkway stretching behind the ticket windows. The boy lifted the teddy bear slightly, as if showing Alden the only companion he had left. The soft toy's nose was worn smooth, and one ear drooped from too many nights of being held tight. "Did your daddy say when he'd be back?" Alden asked. The boy thought for a moment, then pointed toward the western sky. When the sun was big, Alden looked at the horizon, now darkening into deep blue. If the child meant he'd been here since sunset or worse, before then he had been waiting for hours. A child that young shouldn't know how long an hour feels. Yet the tired slump of his shoulders told Alden he knew exactly what waiting meant. Too well. A chill brushed down Alden's spine. He had seen abandoned animals on the roadside that looked less lost than this boy, not crying, not panicking, just holding on to the only thing familiar. He felt something stir in him, something he thought had long gone quiet since the day he lowered Theo's small box into the earth. The kind of instinct that made a man step closer instead of walking away. Before he could speak again, the boy hugged the teddy bear tighter and whispered, almost to himself, "Daddy's coming." His voice didn't tremble, but it carried a kind of hope that made Alden's throat tighten. He stood there a long moment, the silence between them settling into his bones. The depot's lights hummed overhead, and a train horn from far beyond town echoed faintly. Alden exhaled, slow and heavy. Somewhere deep inside, a place he had kept locked for years shifted, reminding him that some things in this world were too fragile to ignore. And for reasons he couldn't name, he could not make his feet turn away from this child. Alden lowered himself onto the bench beside the boy, careful to leave a bit of space so he wouldn't feel crowded. The metal was cold beneath him, holding on to the last breath of daylight. "What's your name, son?" he asked gently. The child pointed to himself. "Caelum." It was a soft sound, almost musical, the way his lips shaped it. A beautiful name, though Alden had rarely heard anything like it. "That's a fine name," he said. "You here from Ashland?" Caelum shrugged, uncertain of how to answer, the way children do when their world is smaller than the questions asked. He lifted one foot slightly, and Alden noticed the brace hidden under the cuff of his pants. It hugged the little leg in a firm, awkward angle. The sight settled something heavy in Alden's heart. This boy wasn't just alone, he was vulnerable in every sense of the word. The depot door swung open as a gust of wind rolled through, bringing with it the scent of pine from the hillsides. A couple walked past, laughing lightly, probably heading home after dinner at one of the town's little restaurants. The world had a way of moving on, even when someone small was waiting in the cold. Alden rose and tried the ticket window again, though he knew what he'd find. Empty. Lights off. Chairs pushed in neatly. No sign that a grown man had been here, asking for tickets, asking for help, asking for anything. He checked the restrooms, the vending machines, even the side lot where people parked for quick drop-offs. Nothing. When he came back to the bench, Caelum hadn't moved. He simply watched Alden with quiet expectation, as if grown-ups walking away and returning were all part of some ritual he didn't quite understand. "You hungry?" Alden asked softly. Caelum shook his head. "Teddy ate." Alden managed a small smile. "That so?" Caelum nodded, completely serious, and held the bear up to show him. The worn button eyes seemed to stare back, brave and patient, like a friend who had been through too much already. Alden crouched down, so he was at the boy's eye level. "Caelum, do you know where your daddy went? Did he tell you anything else?" "He said to wait here," the boy answered. "Said he'd get our tickets and come right back." Then his voice softened. "I was good. I didn't move." The words hit Alden like a quiet blow. A child should never have to explain loyalty, not like that. Not with that solemn pride that comes from trying to please someone who may never return. Alden felt a tremor of something old and familiar. A memory of Theo clutching his hand at that hospital years ago, whispering, "Daddy, you'll stay, right?" And how helpless Alden had felt knowing he couldn't promise forever. He rose again, this time heading toward the depot office, phone mounted on the wall. His hand hovered over it. Calling for help would start a chain of events. This boy couldn't control police, social workers, questions he didn't deserve. But leaving him alone wasn't an option. Not for any man with even half a heart left in him. As he stood there thinking, Caelum's small voice traveled across the open space. "Did I do something wrong, mister?" The words froze him. He turned slowly. The boy wasn't crying, not in the wild, frightened way abandoned children sometimes do. His voice was calm, too calm. It was the stillness that told Alden everything. This wasn't the first time the world had made him feel disposable. Alden came back and sat beside him again, closer this time. "No, son," he murmured. "You didn't do a single thing wrong." He reached out, not quite touching the boy's shoulder, but near enough that the warmth of his hand could be felt. "Sometimes grown-ups get lost. That's all." Caelum nodded, though Alden wasn't sure he believed it. Children believed what they needed to in order to keep their hearts from breaking. The depot lights flickered again, this time dimming as the automatic timer began its nightly cycle. Darkness crept in, soft but steady, like a reminder that the night had plans of its own. Caelum leaned slightly toward Alden, more from instinct than trust, and the bear pressed between them let out a tiny crinkle from the worn stuffing inside. Alden let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Something unseen shifted within him, something that had lain dormant since the day he said goodbye to the only child he ever had. There were moments in life, he thought, when a man didn't choose the road chose him. And as he looked at Caelum, small and brave and waiting for a father who might never return, Alden felt that quiet pull again, steady and deep. He stood there, hand resting on the cold metal of the bench, and wondered, why can't I walk away this time? Night settled over Ashland with the kind of quiet that only small towns understand, the kind that makes every sound feel a little louder and every shadow stretch a little farther. Alden Pierce stood beside the bench, unsure which way the evening would pull him. The depot's automatic doors hissed open behind him as a breath of cool air drifted through, carrying the faint scent of rain from the hills. Street lamps buzzed along the sidewalk, keeping a soft watch over the near-empty station. Caelum's legs dangled from the bench, his little shoe tapping the metal in a slow rhythm, like a child humming without sound. He wasn't crying. That was what troubled Alden most. Children this small usually sob when left alone. Fear came quickly to them, but not this boy. He waited as though waiting was the only thing he knew how to do. Alden rubbed a knuckle across his brow. He had told himself he'd just check on the child, maybe call someone, then head home like any responsible citizen. But his feet stayed rooted. When he glanced back at Caelum, the boy's gaze was fixed on him, steady and trusting in a way Alden didn't feel he deserved. "You cold?" Alden asked, tugging gently at the zipper of the boy's thin jacket. "I'm okay," Caelum murmured. "Teddy's keeping me warm." Alden offered a faint smile. Kids had a way of believing their stuffed friends could fix almost anything. He wished life were still that simple. He straightened and walked toward the depot office phone again, determined this time to call for help. As his hand lifted the receiver, a familiar wave of reluctance washed over him. He knew the system's foster care, police, emergency services. They all meant well, but they could feel like big machines designed for big problems, and sometimes small, fragile things got lost inside them. Still, the alternative was unthinkable. He dialed the non-emergency line. "Jackson County Dispatch," came a calm female voice. "What can I do for you?" Alden cleared his throat. "Yes, ma'am. I'm at Ashland Bus Depot. There's a little boy here alone. Says he's been waiting for his father since before sunset." "We'll send an officer," she replied. "Stay with the child until he arrives." He hung up slowly. Stay with the child, as if he needed a reminder. When he returned to the bench, Caelum was rubbing his thumb along the fabric of the teddy bear's ear, comforting it as if the bear were the one who needed reassurance. "Mister," he asked quietly, "is Daddy mad at me?" The question cut through Alden like the snap of an old board underfoot. He knelt on one knee beside the boy, meeting his eyes. "No, son," he said gently. "No one is mad at you." Caelum blinked, solemn and thoughtful, then nodded as though filing the information away for later. Minutes passed in near silence, marked only by the occasional hiss of a passing car on the wet pavement. A vending machine clunked somewhere behind them. Alden stayed right where he was, one hand resting on the bench for balance, the other loosely gripping the boy's backpack, a tiny, faded thing with a smiling astronaut on the front. Headlights curved into the depot parking lot. The familiar blue and white cruiser rolled up, its engine humming low. Officer Hale stepped out, a sturdy man in his 40s, the kind whose presence could fill a room without raising his voice. He greeted Alden with a polite nod. "Evening, Mr. Pierce," he said. "Dispatch said you found a little one?" Alden gestured toward Caelum. "He's been here a long while." Hale crouched in front of the boy. "Hey there, buddy. What's your name?" "Caelum," the child whispered. "Well, Caelum," Hale said kindly, "we're going to help you find your dad, okay? You've been real brave." Caelum leaned slightly toward Alden, his small hand brushing against Alden's sleeve. It wasn't a grab, not even a hold, just a touch, as if confirming the man was still there. Hale noticed. "Seems he's taken to you," he remarked, not unkindly. Alden shrugged, though his heart gave a small, unexpected twist. "Just trying to help." "Oh." Hale stood. "I'll check the security cameras. Talk to the depot manager. Shouldn't take long." The officer walked off, leaving Alden and Caelum alone again in the dim glow of the depot lights. The boy yawned, a soft, sleepy sound that tugged at something deep inside Alden. Without thinking, Alden sat down, and Caelum leaned against him light as a feather, trusting as a prayer. Alden's breath caught in his throat. He wasn't prepared for how natural it felt, or how much it reminded him of nights long gone, when Theo used to nod off against his shoulder in the living room while they watched old westerns together. He swallowed hard and placed an uncertain but gentle arm around Caelum's back, just enough to steady him if he drifted off completely. The boy's breathing slowed, evened out. The teddy bear slipped slightly, and Alden eased it back into Caelum's arms. The depot was quiet again, too quiet for comfort, and deep down, Alden knew that the night was only just beginning. Officer Hale returned after several minutes, his expression carrying the look Alden had grown familiar with over the years, the look of a man who had seen this kind of thing before, more times than he wished. "No sign of the father on the cameras," he said quietly. Nobody matching the boy's description came back for him. Alden absorbed the words. In the past, he might have simply nodded, offered his sympathy, and stepped aside for the authorities to handle it. But standing here now, with Caelum's small body leaning full against him, he felt a knot tighten in a place he thought had long turned numb. Hale lowered his voice. "We'll take him to the foster center for the night. They'll keep him warm, give him something to eat." Caelum stirred at the sound of the officer's footsteps. His eyes blinked open slowly, unfocused at first, until they found Alden's face. The tiny fingers curled into Alden's sleeve. "Are we leaving?" he asked, the words barely formed through sleepiness. "Not yet," Alden replied softly. Hale cleared his throat, patient but firm. "Mr. Pierce, I know you've got a good heart, but we do need to get him processed. Maybe you can help us walk him to the cruiser. Kids his age get scared when strangers pick them up." Null. He knew this was the procedure, the way the state worked. Rules weren't made to be cruel, they were made to keep children safe. Yet something about the moment felt heavier than rules alone could explain. He helped Caelum sit upright. "These officers are here to help you, son." Caelum's brow furrowed, confusion blooming slowly. "Help me go home?" Alden's throat tightened. "They'll try their best." The boy looked at him, really looked, searching his face, the way only small children can, trying to read the truth behind the words. Alden felt exposed under that gaze, as though the child could see the hollow spaces inside him where old grief still lived. Hale extended a hand. "Come on, Caelum. I'll take you someplace warm." Caelum didn't move. Instead, he reached for Alden's hand, clutching it with a soft desperation that made Alden's breath hitch. It wasn't fear of Hale. It wasn't defiance. It was the instinct of a child who had already endured too much silence to let go of the one person who hadn't walked away. The officer paused, absorbing the scene without judgment. "Mr. Pierce," he said kindly, "would you mind staying with him while we finish the paperwork? He trusts you. That counts for a lot tonight." Alden felt the weight of the request settle on his shoulders. Trust. It had been so long since anyone, especially a child, had looked to him with trust instead of sympathy. Something warm flickered behind his ribs, gentle, unexpected, painful in its sweetness. "Of course," he whispered. "I'll stay." Hale nodded in gratitude and stepped aside, giving them room. For a moment, the depot seemed to blur at the edges, every sound fading into a distant hum. Caelum's small hand still gripped his, the teddy bear tucked safely under the boy's other arm. And Alden felt that strange, stirring again an echo of something he thought had died with Theo. Minutes passed. Hale stepped out to radio dispatch, leaving Alden and Caelum alone in the quiet station. The boy shifted closer, pressing his cheek into Alden's sleeve. His breathing slowed once more, settling into the soft rhythm of a child drifting towards sleep, trusting the place where he'd chosen to rest. Alden stared out the wide depot windows at the dark sweep of the street. Cars came and went. People hurried home to warm kitchens and soft lamplight. Somewhere out there, someone had made a choice, a terrible, unimaginable choice, to leave this child sitting alone on a bench as the world grew darker. Alden didn't understand it. He didn't know if he ever would. What he did know was the weight of Caelum's head against his arm, the innocence in the boy's voice when he'd asked if his father was angry, the quiet endurance that shouldn't belong to someone so young. Hale returned, clipboard in hand. "We'll have child services here in about an hour," he said. "Would you sit with him until then?" Alden didn't hesitate this time. "Yes," he said. "I'll stay as long as he needs." The officer gave him a grateful nod and stepped back to finish the forms. Alden looked down at Caelum, now asleep, with his small fingers still wound tightly into the fabric of Alden's coat. And as he sat there, the depot humming softly around them, a strange and unexpected truth settled over him like a quiet revelation. He didn't know why or how or what it meant for tomorrow. But tonight, he could not seem to walk away. Morning in Ashland arrived the way it often did, quietly, slipping over the hills like a soft blanket of pale gold. The depot was still half asleep when child services arrived, the kind of early hour when the town's bakeries were just warming their ovens and the streetlights hadn't quite surrendered to daylight. Alden Pierce stood beside the bench, with Caelum still curled against him, the boy's head resting on his jacket as though it had always belonged there. Monica Reyes stepped through the depot doors holding a clipboard and a travel mug, steam curling gently from the top. She greeted Officer Hale first, then turned to Alden with the kind of tired but kind smile he recognized instantly, someone who'd spent years trying to patch the holes in broken family stories. "You must be Mr. Pierce," she said softly. "Thank you for staying with him." Alden nodded. Caelum stirred at the sound of another voice, his fingers tensing in the fabric of Alden's sleeve before slowly loosening again. He blinked up at the woman, wide-eyed but silent. Monica crouched down to his level. "Hi, sweetheart. I'm Monica. I'm here to help you. Okay?" Caelum didn't speak. He only looked to Alden, as if checking whether he should trust this stranger. Alden offered a reassuring smile. "She's here to make sure you're safe." Something in his tone made Monica glance at him a second longer than usual. She wasn't judging him, if anything. Her eyes said she understood the silent exchange passing between the two. "We've arranged a temporary placement at the foster center," she explained gently, "just until we can figure out what happened." Alden nodded again, though the words carried a weight he hadn't expected. Temporary placement, foster center, all the words that belonged to a world he'd hoped never to step into again. A world of missing parents, unanswered calls, and long nights spent in rooms that didn't smell like home. Still, he helped Caelum onto his feet. The boy wobbled slightly, first from sleepiness, then from the stiff brace on his left leg. Alden steadied him with a hand on his shoulder. "Would you like me to carry you?" Monica asked. Caelum shook his head quickly, clutching his teddy bear closer. His gaze darted once more to Alden. "Come on," Alden whispered, offering his hand. "I'll walk with you." Only then did Caelum nod. They made their way to Monica's car, an old Subaru with stickers from children's charities on the back window. As she buckled Caelum into a booster seat, Alden felt an odd tug in his chest. The boy looked so small against the fabrics, the teddy bear sitting upright beside him like a quiet guardian. When the door closed, the glass created a soft reflection of Caelum's face, tired, uncertain, brave. Monica stepped around to Alden. "If you'd like, you can visit later today. Some kids do better when they see a familiar face." Alden didn't know why the offer surprised him. "You think I make him feel safer?" A gentle smile crossed her lips. "He held your hand, Mr. Pierce. That usually means something." He nodded, unsure what to do with the warmth her words stirred in him. The drive to the foster center passed in silence, interrupted only by the occasional murmur of the radio playing soft country tunes. Alden followed behind in his car, feeling oddly like part of a caravan carrying something fragile. The streets of Ashland passed by. Tidy storefronts, the old movie theater marquee, the tree-lined sidewalks just beginning to turn shades of deep amber and rust. Autumn had always been his favorite season, and Theo's too. They used to rake leaves together in the yard, piling them into mounds until the boy would leap into them with a burst of laughter. He hadn't thought of that in a long time. When they reached the foster center, a modest two-story building with a wraparound porch and a swing set in the yard, Alden felt a little of his resolve tighten. Children's voices floated from inside, muffled by walls painted in soft blues and greens. It was a comforting place, but still not home. Inside, Monica introduced Caelum to a cheerful young attendant named Laura, who knelt down and offered the boy a box of crayons. "We've got breakfast in a bit," she said in a warm voice. "Think you might want some pancakes later?" Caelum nodded shyly, though his eyes kept drifting toward Alden, as if afraid he'd disappear the moment he blinked. "It's all right," Alden whispered. "I'll be back." Caelum looked uncertain. Then, slowly, he reached for a crayon. Alden stepped back, hands in his coat pockets, watching as the boy drew soft circles at first, then smaller ones inside the larger ones, creating patterns without hesitation, as though the shapes already existed in his mind, and he only needed to free them. Laura chuckled lightly. "He's been doing that since he got here yesterday. Smart little fellow. Quiet, but smart." Alden felt something shift again, like a hinge creaking open. When Caelum finally looked up, meeting Alden's gaze from across the room, a flicker of recognition sparked in the boy's eyes. Something unspoken passed between them, and Alden understood that leaving wouldn't be as simple as closing the door behind him. Alden lingered by the doorway longer than he intended, his hand resting on the trim as if the wood itself might steady him. He told himself he was only making sure Caelum settled in, only making sure he wasn't frightened, only doing what any decent person would do. But deep down, he knew there was more to it, something far more complicated than simple decency. He watched as Laura guided Caelum to a small table near the window. Morning light poured across the tabletop, turning the crayons into bright lines of color. The boy sat quietly, shifting slightly to accommodate the brace on his leg. His teddy bear was placed carefully beside him, propped upright as if supervising the drawing. Laura handed him a fresh sheet of paper. "What do you feel like drawing today?" Caelum didn't answer. He simply picked up a dark blue crayon and began tracing slow, deliberate arcs. Alden leaned a little closer, curious. The arcs became circles perfectly rounded, strangely precise for such a small hand. Then smaller circles appeared inside the larger ones, arranged like pieces of a puzzle only he could see. Laura raised her brows. "He did this yesterday too. I don't know what it means, but he's focused." "It's kind of amazing, honestly." Alden stepped into the room, drawn forward by a quiet pull he didn't understand. Caelum noticed him instantly. His little hand paused mid-curve, and he looked up with an expression Alden had seen only a few times in his life, once on Theo's face, back when the boy was still small enough to climb into his lap without asking. It was that mix of hope and uncertainty, the look of someone wanting to reach out but not sure if they were allowed. Alden crouched beside him. "That's mighty fine drawing you've got there," he said gently. "What's it supposed to be?" Caelum tapped the paper with the tip of the crayon. "Numbers." Alden blinked. "Numbers?" The boy nodded. 7 and 3 and 7 again. He pointed at the divisions inside the circles, tracing them lightly with his finger. "It goes on forever." Laura smiled, thinking he was simply being imaginative. Kids come up with the funniest explanations. But Alden's breath caught. He recognized the pattern not perfectly, but enough to understand that the little circles were fractions, and the repeating sevens weren't random at all. They were repeating decimals. And yet Caelum couldn't possibly know how to write them. He likely didn't even know the alphabet yet. Alden felt something tighten in his chest, a strange mix of wonder and ache. The way Caelum's mind worked, it reminded him of watching Theo line up toy trains in perfect sequences, humming softly as if he heard a music no one else did. Caelum set down the crayon and reached for the teddy bear, pulling it close for comfort. Then he looked up again. "Are you really coming back, Mr. Alden?" The question hit softly, but with the force of a memory. He could almost hear Theo's voice layered behind it, from some long-ago night when storms rattled the windows and his boy had whispered, "You'll stay with me, right?" Alden steadied his voice. "Yes, son. I said I'd come back." Caelum watched him a moment longer, searching his face for truth. Whatever he saw there seemed to satisfy him, because he let out a tiny breath and returned to his drawing. Monica joined Alden near the doorway.
"He's doing better than I expected,"
she said quietly. "Most kids cry the whole first morning." "He's holding it together," Alden murmured. "Yes," she replied softly, "but don't mistake quiet for okay. Sometimes the quiet ones carry the heaviest things." Alden nodded slowly. He knew that too well. Monica looked at him with gentle curiosity. "You can visit whenever you'd like. We encourage it. Helps the little ones adjust." He hesitated. "You think it would help him?" "I think," she said, "you're the first person he's trusted since the moment his world fell apart." Alden swallowed. Hearing it out loud made the feeling in his chest tighten further. He glanced back into the room where Caelum sat, drawing small, fragile, creating patterns with crayons as if the universe unfolded in front of him. He couldn't explain the pull he felt. Maybe it was the weight of his own empty house, the quiet dinner table, the rooms filled with memories no one walked through anymore. Or maybe it was simply the way Caelum looked at him, like a man who hadn't left. "Thanks, Monica," he said softly. "I'll come back." When he finally stepped outside, the cool air brushed his face, grounding him. Leaves swirled along the sidewalk, catching the light in little flashes of gold. The town was beginning to wake, but Alden felt as though he were moving through a different kind of morning altogether, one in which something unexpected had cracked open inside him. He walked toward his car with slow, measured steps. He'd done what he was supposed to do, fulfilled his responsibility, stayed until help arrived. But as he reached for the door handle, he paused, a question settling in his mind like a pebble dropped into still water. Why couldn't he shake the feeling that this wasn't the end of it? He opened the car door, slid into the driver's seat, and rested both hands on the wheel. His heart beat a little too loudly in the quiet cabin. Through the windshield, he could still see the outline of the foster center, a place meant to hold children safely. Yet somehow, It felt like the wrong place for that small boy who had waited so patiently on a cold bench. Alden exhaled slowly, a long breath he hadn't realized he'd been carrying with him since the night before. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but he knew one thing with unsettling clarity. Leaving Caelum behind had felt far too much like leaving a part of himself. 2 days passed with a slow, steady rhythm, the kind that settled over Ashland when the leaves began turning from amber to deep rust. Alden Pierce kept his word. He visited Caelum at the foster center, bringing small comforts each time. A warm muffin from the diner, a little set of colored pencils. Once, a small wooden puzzle shaped like Oregon's mountains. Nothing extravagant, nothing that would overwhelm a child who had already endured too much. Just gentle gestures, the kind that built trust one soft brick at a time. But every night afterward, when Alden returned to his quiet house in Rogue Valley, he felt the same question haunting him. Where was Caelum's father now? And perhaps more urgently, what had driven the man to walk away from a child like that? It was Monica who finally answered him. She called on a gray morning, her voice low, carrying that mixture of relief and concern people used when delivering complicated news. "We located the father," she said. "He's alive. He's in Medford." Alden's pulse tightened. He didn't know why it mattered so much, but it did. "Is he willing to see the boy?" There was a pause. "He hasn't asked for him, but he didn't run either. Maybe that's something." By early evening, Alden found himself driving along the highway toward Medford, watching the rain bead across his windshield like silver threads. He didn't know what he expected to find: a callous man, perhaps, or someone hardened beyond reason. But he needed to understand, for Caelum's sake, for his own peace, and perhaps for another reason he wasn't ready to name. The motel Monica had mentioned stood on the edge of town, a faded building with peeling blue paint and a neon sign that sputtered weakly. A place where life paused, where people hid, where the world looked away. The parking lot was nearly empty, except for an old sedan and a pickup truck missing its tailgate. Alden stepped through the door of room 12 after a soft knock. The smell hit him first: cheap cigarettes, stale beer, and the faint scent of rain-soaked carpet. A man sat on the bed, leaning forward, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor as though afraid to look up. Jaron Brooks. He was younger than Alden expected. Mid-30s, maybe. His hair unkempt, his face unshaven, eyes dark and hollow like a man who'd forgotten what sleep felt like. A half-crushed beer can sat on the nightstand beside an untouched takeout meal. "You the bus driver?" Jaron asked without lifting his head fully. His voice was rough, worn from too many nights, talking only to himself. Alden nodded. "Yes. I'm the one who found your boy at the depot." Jaron winced, as though the words themselves were knives. He dragged a hand down his face. "Figures they'd send someone like you, the decent kind. Makes this mess look worse on me." Alden took a slow breath. He had prepared questions, ideas, maybe even judgment, but none of those seemed right now. Not in this dim room, not with this man who looked like grief had gnawed him down to the bone. "I didn't come to judge you," Alden said. "I just want to understand." Jaron barked a short, humorless laugh. "Understand? You got kids, mister?" Alden hesitated. "I had a son." Something flickered in Jaron's eyes, an emotion hard to place, somewhere between recognition and shame. "Then maybe you do understand," he said quietly. "What it does to a man when life hands him a choice he can't live with." The rain outside thickened, tapping softly against the window, like distant fingers asking to be let in. Jaron rose slowly from the bed, pacing the small room in uneven steps. "Sarai, my wife, she didn't make it through the delivery. They told me I had to choose, her or the baby, and I chose the baby." He shook his head, voice tight with old pain. "What kind of man chooses that? What kind of man walks out of that hospital with a newborn and leaves his wife behind in the ground?" Alden felt the words settle deep inside him. Loss, recognized loss. He knew the taste of guilt, the weight of impossible choices. "You chose life," he said softly. "Even if it hurt." Jaron let out a sharp exhale. "You think that makes it easier? That boy Caelum, every time I looked at him, I saw her dying. I saw what I lost. And no matter how much I tried, I couldn't. I couldn't be what he needed. His voice cracked, a rough, splintered sound. I kept thinking he'd be better with someone stronger, someone who didn't break every time his leg brace squeaked on the floor. Alden watched him quietly, not with judgment, not with pity, but with a patient understanding only someone who had carried a similar ache could offer. Jaren finally looked up, eyes rimmed in red. I didn't leave him because I didn't love him. His voice lowered to a whisper. I left him because I did. Alden's breath stilled. For the first time, he saw beyond the unshaven face, beyond the emptiness, saw a man drowning in guilt, not indifference. Jaren turned away, shoulders trembling. It still makes me a coward. Alden opened his mouth to speak, but the man reached into the nightstand drawer with shaking hands. I want to show you something. And he pulled out a small, wrinkled envelope, creased, smudged, soft around the edges from being opened too many times. Jaren held it like something fragile, something sacred, but also something he feared. And in that moment, Alden felt the air shift. Whatever was in that envelope, it was going to change everything. Jaren sat back down on the edge of the bed, envelope trembling between his fingers. He didn't open it right away. Instead, he pressed it against his forehead, eyes squeezed shut, as if bracing for pain he already knew too well. Alden approached slowly, stopping just a few feet away. Take your time, he murmured. Jaren swallowed, lowered the envelope, then held it out. This was supposed to be for him, for Caelum. I wrote it the night before his voice faltered. Before I left him at the depot, Alden hesitated before taking it. The paper was soft and nearly worn through in places. The ink smudged like the note had been folded and unfolded many times. It felt strangely warm in his hands, heavy with sadness. I couldn't give it to him, Jaren whispered. I couldn't even look him in the eye that day. Alden slid the letter halfway out, just enough to see the first line, written in uneven strokes like someone trying to steady a hand that wouldn't stop shaking. If anyone finds him, please tell him. I'm sorry I couldn't be the man he deserved. The words blurred for a moment, not because of tears Alden wasn't sure he could cry anymore, but because they carried a kind of ache he understood intimately. He pushed the letter back into the envelope and handed it to Jaren. That doesn't make you a monster, he said quietly. It makes you a man who was hurting. Jaren let out a sound somewhere between a breath and a sob. You don't know what it's like. Alden exhaled. Maybe not your exact pain, but I know what it means to lose a child, and I know what it means to feel like you failed them. Jaren's eyes lifted slowly, meeting Alden's for the first time with something more than shame, something like recognition. Your boy, he murmured. You said you lost him. Alden nodded. Theo. He was 6. The motel room fell still. Even the rain outside seemed to quiet, giving space for the heaviness that settled between the two men. How'd you get through it? Jaren asked. Alden looked away, eyes tracing the peeling wallpaper as if the answer might be written there. I didn't. Not for a long time. Most days I still don't know if I have. He paused, voice softening. But I do know that grief can twist a man into someone he doesn't recognize, and it can make him think the people he loves are better off without him. Jaren nodded slowly, tears gathering but not falling. That's exactly it. Every night I thought I'd wake up and be stronger, that I'd be the father she wanted me to be. But every morning I saw that brace, and all I saw was the cost, what I lost, what I couldn't protect. Alden pulled out a chair and sat down, resting his elbows on his knees. Caelum doesn't need perfect. He doesn't need strong. He paused. He needs someone who won't walk away. Jaren flinched. I know, and I already failed that. Silence stretched, tender and raw. Alden took a slow breath. You could try again, but Jaren shook his head immediately. No, I can't give him what he needs. I've thought about it over and over. He deserves stability. Someone who won't fall apart every time he looks at him. He gestured to the envelope. That letter, that's the best of me, and even that wasn't enough. Alden felt a wave of unexpected tenderness for this broken man. Not because he approved of what Jaren had done, but because he finally saw the truth. Jaren hadn't abandoned Caelum out of cruelty. He had abandoned him out of despair. Then what do you want to happen now? Alden asked softly. Jaren rubbed the back of his neck. I don't know. Maybe someone else can give him what I can't. Someone who isn't drowning every day. His eyes drifted toward the window. But I know I'm not that person. The rain tapped harder against the glass, as if urging him to continue. If you're here, Jaren said slowly, if you came all this way, I figure you care about him. More than a stranger normally would. Alden didn't deny it. Jaren swallowed. So tell me something, Mr. Pierce. If a man can't be what his boy needs if he's broken all the way down, what's the right thing to do? Hold on and keep hurting him? Or step aside and let somebody better try? Alden opened his mouth, then closed it. There were answers he could have given, moral ones, comforting ones, easy ones. None of them felt honest. Instead, he said the only true thing he knew. Whatever choice you make, you should make it for him. Not for your guilt. Not for your grief. For Caelum. Jaren absorbed the words in silence. His hands trembled slightly as he looked down at the envelope one more time. Then he placed it carefully back inside the drawer, as though returning something sacred to a resting place. I'm not asking you to fix me, Jaren whispered. Just tell me he's okay. Alden's voice softened. He's more than okay. He's waiting. Something cracked in Jaren's expression, a mixture of longing, pain, and something close to surrender. He sat down heavily. God help me, he murmured. I don't know what to do. Alden's gaze drifted to the envelope, peeking from the drawer. He didn't know what came next, but he knew this moment was the beginning of a storm neither man could avoid. The motel room felt smaller when the truth finally settled between the two men, so small it seemed to press the air inward, as though the walls themselves understood the weight of the moment. Alden Pierce stayed seated, elbows on his knees, eyes steady on the man across from him. Outside, the rain had weakened to a dusty drizzle, tapping faintly at the thin glass pane. A streetlight flickered in the parking lot, washing the cracked asphalt in tired orange light. Jaren Brooks rubbed his hands together, a restless motion that betrayed nerves he tried to hide. You ever notice, he murmured, that grief don't just sit in the chest? It gets in the bones, makes everything feel heavier. Alden didn't respond right away. He wanted to give the words space. Let them breathe. Yes, he finally answered. I know something about that. Jaren huffed a bitter laugh. Yeah, your boy, Theo. He let the name rest on his tongue, almost reverently. I'm sorry, I really am. Alden nodded, accepting the sympathy without flinching. He'd learned long ago that grief responded best to gentle acknowledgments, not apologies. Thank you. Jaren sank deeper into the chair by the window. The motel curtains billowed slightly from a draft, stirring the stale air. It's strange, he said quietly. How a person can be gone for years, but one wrong memory knocks you flat again. Alden let his gaze settle on the old sedan outside a tired silver car with mismatched hubcaps. He imagined Jaren pulling into the depot with the boy asleep in the back seat. Imagined the man sitting behind the wheel too long, fighting a storm inside that no one else could see. What happened that day? Alden asked softly. At the depot. Jaren swallowed. It took him a moment to speak. I woke up that morning feeling like I was at the bottom of a well. You know the kind. He paused, searching Alden's face. Where no matter how loud you yell, no one hears it. His jaw tightened. But Caelum, he was smiling. He always smiled in the mornings. Even when it hurt for him to walk, he'd still smile. He ran a hand over his face. I dressed him slow, made sure his brace was on right, gave him his bear, and the whole time I kept thinking, she should be here. Sarai should have been brushing his curls, not me. She should have been tying his shoes, telling him stories. None of this was supposed to be mine alone. His voice trembled, just barely. So I drove, he went on. Drove without knowing where I was going. Ended up at the bus depot. Figured maybe a ride would clear my head. He shook his head, one quick, violent motion. But when I lifted him out of the back seat and heard that brace squeak, it was like hearing her last breath all over again. My knees went weak. Alden felt the truth in the man's voice. The kind that doesn't try to excuse anything, just spills out because holding it in any longer would break something. I sat him on the bench, Jaren whispered. He looked so small, so trusting. He asked if Teddy was coming too. His throat tightened. And I told him yes. I told him I was going to get tickets. But really, I I walked out because I didn't think I could be what he needed. Not then. Maybe not ever. Alden watched the man crumble in pieces, quietly and without theatrics, like an overburdened beam finally bowing beneath years of strain. You didn't have to be perfect, Alden murmured. You just had to stay. A muscle in Jaren's jaw twitched. You stayed with your boy? Alden's breath caught. He looked down at his hands that had once carried his son, fed him, tucked him in, hands that had held him on the last night. I stayed every minute I could, he said quietly. But sometimes staying doesn't change what's coming. A deep silence followed, filled only by the soft hum of the motel's old air conditioner kicking on and off. Jaren leaned back in the chair. I can't look at him without remembering the moment they told me Sarai didn't make it, and I hate myself for that. His voice cracked open, raw and unfiltered. But it's the truth. Alden let the words settle. Then he rose from his chair, slow and deliberate, and stepped closer. Not looming, not judging, just present. You're not wrong for being broken, Alden said softly. But Caelum shouldn't pay the price for it. Jaren closed his eyes, pain etched into every line of his face. You think I don't know that? Alden's voice dropped to a gentler register, almost grandfatherly. Then help him. In whatever way you can. Jaren opened his eyes slowly. There was something different in them now. Not defiance, not shame, a weary clarity. And what if the best way to help him, he whispered, is to accept that I'm not the man he needs? Alden didn't answer, not yet, not with words. Instead, he sat back down, folding his hands, waiting for the truth Jaren was still wrestling to name. The rain outside grew softer, almost timid. Jaren stared at the worn carpet, his voice barely audible. I'm not asking forgiveness. He hesitated. I just want him to be okay. Alden nodded slowly. He could be. He just needs someone who won't leave again. Jaren swallowed hard. And you think that could be you? Alden didn't flinch at the question. He didn't lean forward or look away. He simply held the man's gaze with a steadying calm born of years, carrying his own ghosts. I don't know what it means yet, he said quietly. But I haven't been able to walk away from that boy since the moment I saw him. Those words hung in the air, still and heavy. Jaren's hands trembled again as he reached for the nightstand drawer. Then you should see what's inside this envelope, he whispered, because it might tell you why he needs someone better than me. He slid it toward Alden with a finality that made the room feel even smaller, the air thicker. Alden hesitated only a breath before taking it. And in that pause, quiet, fragile, suspended, everything seemed to shift. Alden turned the envelope in his hands, feeling its fragile weight. Jaren watched him with a hollow stillness, as if bracing for a truth he already knew but couldn't bear to speak aloud. I wrote it the night before the depot, Jaren said quietly. I must have folded it 100 times. Thought maybe someone would find it. Thought maybe it'd explain what I couldn't say. Alden slid the note out just far enough to read the first line. The uneven handwriting trembled across the page. If anyone finds him, tell him, I couldn't be the man he deserved. Alden's chest tightened. He didn't read further. Some words weren't meant to be shared by strangers. He returned the letter gently. You loved him, he murmured. Jaren laughed under his breath, a broken, humorless sound. Love isn't always enough, not when you're cracked straight through. Alden sat beside him, the motel mattress dipping under their combined weight. Being broken doesn't disqualify you, he said softly. It just means you're human. Jaren rubbed his eyes. Every time Caelum tried to walk, every time that brace squeaked, all I could think was what I took from Sarai. He shook his head. And he deserves a father who doesn't fall apart at the sight of his own son. The room hummed with silence. You asked what the right thing is, Alden said. Maybe it's not choosing between holding on or letting go. Maybe it's choosing whatever gives him a chance at a life filled with people who stay. Jaren stared at the floor, voice barely audible. And if that someone isn't me? Alden didn't answer immediately. He didn't need to. The truth was already sitting between them. Jaren finally looked up, eyes shining with grief and something close to acceptance. You care about him? He whispered. I saw it the second you walked in. Alden exhaled slowly. I didn't expect to, but yes, I care about him. Jaren nodded, a small, trembling motion like a man surrendering to a truth he'd fought too long. His voice cracked as he pushed the envelope toward Alden again. Then you should read the rest, because what's in there? That's why he needs a chance with someone stronger than me. The envelope lay between them, thin as paper but heavy enough to change everything. And Alden understood that the moment he opened it, nothing in either man's life would remain the same. The fog was still lifting over Jackson County when Alden Pierce stepped onto the courthouse steps. He stood there a moment, steadying himself. Courtrooms had never frightened him, but today felt different. Today wasn't about money or business. It was about a little boy waiting somewhere across town, unaware that his life might be rewritten before lunchtime. Inside, the courthouse smelled faintly of old wood and paper, an oddly comforting scent that reminded Alden of libraries and quieter years. Monica Reyes led him to a small waiting area outside the family courtroom. She glanced at him kindly. "Whatever happens, Caelum's going to be okay," she said. A moment later, Jaron arrived. He looked worn down, but cleaner than the night at the motel, shirt tucked in, hair combed, eyes heavy with a kind of tired honesty. He gave Alden a small nod. Not friendly, not hostile, just human. When they entered the courtroom, Judge Caldwell, silver-haired, steady, warm, in an old-fashioned way, reviewed the file quietly. After a moment, she addressed the room. "Mr. Brooks," she said gently, "this case concerns hardship, not condemnation. You may speak." Jaron stood, voice rough but clear. "Your Honor, I love my boy, but grief's been eating me alive. I haven't been the man he needs, and he deserves better than a father who breaks every time he looks at him." He paused, breath trembling. "I don't want to run. I just want him safe." Judge Caldwell folded her hands. "Are you saying you wish to surrender your parental rights?" A quiet settled over the courtroom, deep enough to feel. Jaron lowered his gaze. "Yes, ma'am, for his sake." Alden felt something shift inside him, an ache he couldn't name. The judge turned to him. "Mr. Pierce, you remained with the child when no one else did. Why?" Alden rose. "Because he trusted me," he said simply. "And I couldn't walk away." She held his gaze a moment, then nodded. Jaron signed the form with shaking hands. The sound of the pen on paper was soft, but final. When he set the pen down, his shoulders slumped. Not in defeat, but in release, like a man laying down a weight after years of carrying it alone. He turned toward Alden. "Tell him," his voice cracked. "Tell him I tried." Before Alden could answer, Jaron walked out into the hall, swallowed by morning light. Monica approached, her tone gentle. "Alden." Caelum's waiting at the center. Alden took a slow breath, and he knew with a certainty deeper than fear that the boy waiting for him was no longer just a responsibility. He was becoming family. The drive to the foster center was quiet, the kind of quiet that settles in a man's chest when he knows a turning point is waiting ahead. Alden followed the tree-lined road through Medford, the last autumn leaves skimming across the pavement like small reminders that seasons change whether we're ready or not. When he arrived, Monica met him at the door.
"He's been asking if you were coming,"
she said gently. Inside, the center felt warm children's drawings on the walls, soft colors, the faint smell of freshly cleaned carpets. Alden paused at the playroom doorway. Caelum was at a small table, drawing careful shapes with a blue crayon. Circles divided into neat sections, like tiny puzzles only he understood. His brace stuck out straight, but he didn't seem to notice. "Hey there, bud," Alden said softly. Caelum looked up instantly. His face brightened, not wildly, just a quiet kind of relief. "You came back." "Of course," Alden replied as he sat beside him. "I said I would." Caelum slid the paper toward him. "These are number circles." Teddy helped. Alden smiled. "They're beautiful." For a moment, they sat in calm silence. Then Caelum asked the question Alden had braced for. "Did Daddy go home?" Alden kept his voice gentle. "Your dad made a hard decision today. He wants you to be somewhere safe while he works on getting better." Caelum lowered his gaze. "Is he mad at me?" "No," Alden said firmly. "He loves you, but grown-ups sometimes need more time than they think." The boy hesitated, then quietly leaned against Alden's arm. "Are you going to go away too?" Alden placed a steady hand on the child's back.
No, Caelum. I'm here.
The boy nodded slowly and rested his cheek on Alden's sleeve, as if he had finally found a place to fit. Alden didn't move. He simply let the boy lean, small and trusting. And in that soft moment, he realized with absolute clarity, he wasn't just visiting anymore. He was needed. They stayed like that for several quiet minutes, Caelum leaning gently against Alden, Alden steady and still, listening to the small, even breaths of a boy trying to understand a world far larger than he should have to. When Caelum finally pulled back, he kept hold of Alden's sleeve. "Can you read to me?" he asked, pointing toward a small shelf of picture books. "Of course," Alden said. They moved to a soft rug near the window. Caelum curled close as Alden opened a worn copy of Goodnight Moon. The boy followed each page with the same quiet focus he used for his number circles, tracing tiny shapes in the air as Alden read. Halfway through, his head rested against Alden's shoulder, eyes blinking slower and slower. Monica watched from the doorway, her smile warm but thoughtful. When the story ended, she stepped inside. "Alden," she said softly, "the placement committee is reviewing potential guardians. They'll want to speak with you soon." Caelum's hand tightened around Alden's. Alden looked down at the boy, the small fingers curled into his sleeve. The trust in that simple touch, and something inside him settled with unmistakable clarity. He wasn't afraid of responsibility. He was afraid of losing this child. He brushed a hand gently over Caelum's hair.
I'll be here,
he whispered. Caelum nodded sleepily, believing every word. And as Alden lifted the boy into his arms, he realized the truth that had been growing quietly since the night at the bus depot. He couldn't imagine his life without Caelum anymore. The sun hung low over Jackson County when Alden arrived for the committee meeting. The small foster center felt quieter than usual, as if the building itself understood this was a day that mattered. Alden sat in the waiting chair, hands loosely clasped, listening to the hum of the heater while steadying his breath. Monica gave him an encouraging nod. "They're ready." The meeting was simple. 4 committee members, polite questions, warm faces. "Mr. Pierce," one asked, "do you intend to remain in Caelum's life?" Alden answered softly but without hesitation. "Yes, as long as he needs me." They exchanged looks, the kind that told him they heard the truth in his voice. When the meeting ended, Alden stepped into the hallway feeling a quiet shift inside him. Nothing was final yet, but the door toward becoming Caelum's guardian was starting to open. He found Caelum in the playroom, standing by the window with Teddy tucked under his arm. The boy's face lit up the moment he saw him. "You came back again," Caelum whispered. Alden Caelt. "I'll always come back." The boy slid his small hand into Alden's. "Can I show you something?" He guided Alden to the center's little garden and climbed onto the old wooden bench. "This is where I wait for you," Caelum said, simple and sincere. Alden felt a soft ache settle in his chest, an ache shaped like belonging. "Do you sit here every day?" he asked. "Just a little," Caelum nodded. "'Cause I know you're coming." Alden sat beside him, the late afternoon light falling gently across them. Caelum leaned against his arm, quiet and trusting. In that moment, Alden understood. He wasn't choosing a child. He was answering a child who had already chosen him. A few days later, after the committee completed its review, Alden returned to the center with a folder in his hand. The final papers weren't dramatic, just a few signatures. A quiet approval, but they carried the weight of a whole new life. When Caelum saw him, he hurried across the room as fast as his brace allowed and wrapped both arms around Alden's leg. "Is it time?" he whispered. Alden lifted him gently. "It's time." They drove in calm silence toward the old Medford bus depot, the place where everything had begun. The autumn light was soft, the building nearly empty. Caelum held Teddy tightly as they walked toward the familiar bench. He stopped in front of it, looking thoughtful in a way, far older than his small years. "Teddy was with me when I was alone," he said softly. "But I'm not alone now." "Huh?" He placed the worn bear on the bench gently, almost reverently. "For another kid," he added, "if they get scared." Alden felt his throat tighten. He knelt beside him. "That's a very kind thing to do." Caelum slipped his hand into Alden's small fingers, curling with trust. "Can we go home now?" Alden gathered him into his arms, holding him close, feeling the boy's heartbeat against his chest, steady, warm, alive. "Yes, Caelum," he whispered. "Let's go home." As they stepped out of the depot, the evening sun poured across the pavement like a quiet blessing. And for the first time in years, Alden felt something settle inside him. Not grief, not emptiness, but a gentle peace. Because the boy the world had abandoned had finally found his father. In the quiet afterglow of their journey, Alden carried the little boy out of the depot with a steadiness that felt almost sacred, like a man finally stepping out from years of shadows. Caelum's small hand curled around his collar, trusting, certain, the way children always seem to know when they have finally found a safe place to rest. And for the first time in a long while, Alden walked forward without the weight of loss pulling at his heels, but with the gentle promise of a life rebuilt from kindness and second chances. If you feel this story was meaningful, press 1 the comments, and if not, or if you have thoughts to share, press 0. At the heart of this tale lies a simple truth. Love, even when imperfect, has the power to redeem the broken places inside us. Redemption isn't a grand gesture. It's a quiet choice made again and again, like showing up for a child who waits on a worn wooden bench. And family isn't always written in blood. Sometimes it's woven gently through compassion, patience, and the courage to stay. In a world that moves too fast, one steady hand can change the course of a life. It reminds us that every soul, young or old, deserves warmth, belonging, and a place to call home. The lesson is clear. Love can heal what life has shattered. Every person deserves a family. And happiness finds us when we live not only for ourselves, but for someone who needs us. Just as a porch light glowing in the dusk can guide someone back across a long driveway, a single act of unconditional kindness can lead us through the darkest hours of our days. Many of us, especially in our later years, know what it means to lose someone and also what it means to open our heart again, even when it trembles. Like the memory of a quiet Sunday dinner or the sound of grandkids laughing in the yard, compassion has a way of bringing life back into places we thought were gone forever. So tonight, take a moment to sit with this story. Think about the people who once waited for you or the ones you're still willing to show up for. And if this story touched your heart, feel free to share it so someone else out there might remember that kindness still matters. May this tale remind us all that even in quiet corners of bus depots, courtrooms, and small-town foster centers, grace is still alive, and sometimes it arrives in the form of a child taking your hand